All right, thank you. We're recording. Calling the meeting to order here at 7:30. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. Before I start with the first order of business on the agenda to approve the minutes, I just want to give the mic over to Kevin Moynihan, who's here tonight for recommendations on the committee.
Conducting your election of officers.
Yes, that too, Kevin. Sorry.
So Happy New Year to everyone. Good to see you all. It's my duty and obligation to come and conduct your election for your officers for the new year. And I would first of all take nominations for chairman.
I'd like to nominate Rhonda Sigel.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Carl. Any further nominations for chairman? Hearing none. All in favor of electing Rhonda to another term as chairman? Looks unanimous to me. I can't see.
Yes, I don't know. And Jack also. Yep, unanimous. You're missing one person tonight, Matt Consport, but he isn't present. So, yep.
Okay. Congratulations, Rhonda.
Thank you very much.
Now for your secretary, do I have a nomination for secretary?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Francesca Segalis again.
All right.
Second.
Hank is second. Okay. Any further nominations for secretary? I see none. All in favor of electing Francesca to another term as secretary?
That was unanimous.
That looks unanimous. All right, congratulations. And that concludes my, I want to take the opportunity to thank you all for your service to the town. This is a important commission and a fun commission. And so I appreciate the service of each and every one of you to the town. I will stay on for a while. I may not stay for the entire meeting, Rhonda. So.
Okay, great. Kevin, thanks so much. Congratulations, Francesca, and thank you. I second those sentiments Kevin had. Thank you for all your time and energy, everyone on this commission and those involved. All right, going to the agenda, we will, item number 1, to approve the minutes of the Park and Rec Commission meeting from December 9th. I would just call out when you are approving the minutes that there are attached emails and letters that were received during that meeting that are going as part of the record. So once you do, someone makes a motion, I'll make sure and include that. So I'll give a minute. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 9th, including those emails and letters regarding Kiwanis Park? Thank you, Francesca. Laura, I see a second hand raised. Anyone opposed? All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And Francesca, if you want to do a test run on the chat, we'll see if it pops in and I'll watch that as I go to the next item. Introducing Mike Benavento. Thanks for being here tonight. Mike is chairman of the New Canaan Athletic Foundation. So we want to give him a chance to give our commission an update of what's been going on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rana. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but still comprehensive. And I've done this with a couple of other bodies, town bodies in town through the fall, starting with the first selectman and also with a couple of members of town council. At least we're on a email copied for to go over some of the activities that we undertook over the summer and through the fall. And now I have our full financials, at least for the end of the year. So it's really twofold. Number one, to report on how we did as an enterprise zone for the summer of 2020. And you all recall that the Athletic Foundation, as part of our last, or as part of the memorandum of understanding that we entered into with the town back in November of 2019, we, the Athletic Foundation, are charged with running what we call an enterprise zone from June 15th to August 15th, which is really meant to generate revenues for the fields for private consumption in order to generate net revenues to then give back to the town. And the purpose of those funds going back into the town are twofold. Number one, to generate an endowment over a 10-year period in order to build funds in order to replace the turf that we put down a little over, I guess now 3 years ago. And that 50% of the funds, the net funds generated from the enterprise zone, go into that endowment fund, and 50% of the enterprise zone funds go into what we call it's an enhancements account, but it's really what we call shiny new toys in order to build new things for the town of New Canaan. This past year, and obviously it was a tough year given the restrictions that we had with COVID. But I would tell you the gross revenues that we brought in from enterprise zone tallied to $77,520.85. I would tell you that given the restrictions and everything that we did, it's pretty impressive that we were able to generate that level of revenue in a year where we had those restrictions. And by comparison, we did $30,975 in the summer of 2019. So more than 100% increase in a year where we were restricted, and restricted not only from usage, but also from the people that wanted to use the fields, from our potential clientele. So I've done it with other people, and I would give a big shout out to Bobby Rushton. Bobby's our executive director, and really it's his responsibility to market and run these events and rent these fields over the summer. So, he's done just a Herculean job, and I thank him for that. And I think we should all be appreciative of what he's done. We made a promise when we started this and undertook an idea to run an enterprise zone that we would walk and then jog and then run for the benefit of New Canaan. So as the chairman, I'm just pleased to see that we went from a walk to a pretty brisk sprint, in my opinion. And we have a lot more to do, and we're building a lot of traction. So the good news is we're getting a lot of buzz around the enterprise zone and the use of those fields for the benefit of New Canaan. So I'm very pleased with that. The other thing that the MOU outlined was that the Athletic Foundation would undertake the collection of the player usage fees. And you'll recall this is a fee that gets charged to all the youth sports, or basically anybody that uses the fields, including some of the recreation programs. And this year through the fall, we didn't really collect anything in the spring. Obviously, there wasn't the fields weren't being used, but through the fall we collected $29,750 of player usage fees, and the split on that player usage fee is the same. It goes 50% into a turf endowment account and 50% into an enhancements account. So again, we're happy to do that. Everybody was really good about paying that fee, and those are the two kind of commercial enterprises that the Athletic Foundation runs. The last thing that I'll update you guys on is we have started and kicked off our next capital campaign with a fairly ambitious goal. It started quietly in the month of December, where we are intending to raise $5 million at the Athletic Foundation in order to support a master plan that we've come up with in conjunction with the town and Tiger and Steve and the Fields Committee and Jay and both Kevin and Brian Lutzy, in order to figure out exactly, if we were dreaming the big dreams, what we could do from a master plan standpoint, from a footprint in and around the athletic facilities at the high school in Waveney. And our goal as a foundation is to raise $5 million of private funds in order to support the building of those athletic fields. So we just started in the beginning of December. We've had a couple of private meetings. I would, without getting over my skis, I've been very pleased with the initial support and even some of the initial commitments, I would call them, because they're not quite donations yet, but substantial commitments from what I view as anchor tenants as we build this capital campaign over the next 18 months. So I'm very pleased with all the traction and momentum that we have at the Athletic Foundation. Really excited about what we can do for the town of New Canaan, for our young athletes and the community at large. You'll recall that our mission statement is all sports and community. And I think we're going to be able to touch a lot of people and a lot of facilities. So that's it for me, Rana. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's all I had.
Mike, thank you. I really see all your hard work each day with people using those fields, both, adults, children, all walks of life. So it's an incredible thing to have. We're a lucky town, and appreciate all the effort you do and all the fundraising. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you. I do not see any hands for questions. I think we're good. Mike, great update. Thank you for everything. Continue on.
The last thing I would say, Rana, is that, I appreciate you say me, but there's a lot of people pulling oars in the same direction, including Tiger and Kevin and Steve and a lot of people in town government also. So it's a lot of folks that are doing this, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight. All right, our next update, Chris Shipper is on with us. He's going to be giving a Conservation Commission update and Bristow Sanctuary. And I think, Tiger, you might be chiming in a bit too. So I'll hand that over to Chris unless Tiger chimes in first.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you for the lead in, and also thank you to Jean and Francesca who did help us get initiated in this program. I think it was just over 18 months ago that the Conservation Commission began working on a plan for Bristow. And I would say the Conservation Commission, and with some help from the Friends of Bristow, which is a fund set up at the Community Foundation, and in particular DPW, Tiger and his team, and John as well, have been incredibly helpful to us in getting this program off the ground and getting the rehabilitation off the ground. As you know, the goal is to sort of restore the park in time for its 100th anniversary in 2024. It is a historic park, and we've had a great opportunity to build in some of the history. But rather than continue, I'd like to turn it over to Tiger and let him give you an update on where we are after a half a year program, and discuss any questions or answer any questions you may have going forward.
Thank you.
I think that was Mr. Trump calling me for a donation.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Ron, I was going to share my screen just to.
Okay.
That's good with you. You got to allow me to do that. Unfortunately, it says it's disabled.
I think you're good now.
Give it a shot. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. So, Chris mentioned it's been about 18 months. I think I was going to say a year, but 18 is okay. For what we've been able to accomplish in a year, I felt it was just easier, instead of, you got a memo from my town engineer, from Maria, but I thought it'd be easier just to take you on a stroll through Bristow. I took it this morning, at about 8 o'clock this morning. It was a really nice, quiet morning there. So to kind of give you an idea, this is the master plan, and I'm going to kind of walk you through the entrance off of Mead Park, off the back of the baseball fields, walk you all the way down to 106, and then wind up at the Jewel, I would call it, at the pond. So looking at it, at the end of the parking lot between Mead Park Lodge and the baseball fields is the entrance to the trail. Lead down next to the baseball fields, and it kind of heads you up. And I come across user number one, I'd say. First gentleman I passed, he was coming out of the park as I was coming in. And then we kind of walk our way through. This area is, as we enter the park itself, there will be some fencing repairs done. A brand new arch will go in through there to kind of beautify that entrance way into the park itself. And then as we head down the Green Link Trail across the top along the railroad tracks, and we head down first, we get our first view of the first rehabilitated bridge. It kind of gives you a better view of it. really nice setting down at the bottom. And off to the left, behind the trees there will be a nice area, open area that's been cleared for our first overlook. And that'll give you a nice kind of 360-degree view of the park. That's in the next phases of the work. And then moving forward, as you continue on your way down to 106, nice area inside that was relatively quiet, or actually very quiet. I didn't hear anything. Train went by, didn't even notice that the train went by. Then we come to our first split in the trail, and if we head off to the right, it leads us to the northern view of the pond. Really nice view of the pond from the northern side. And then if I had actually stayed on the trail on the left-hand side, it leads us past what used to be a gravel pit, which is now going to be converted over into a wetland meadow. We took the spoils from the pond dredging and placed them inside here and leveled it out, and removed a couple of small saplings and things of that nature. And that'll be a very nice wildflower meadow in the coming years. And then as we head back out again towards 106, if I look to the right, I can see the pond. And if not, and I continue forward, I head out to 106 itself and the Grand Oak at the entrance. Again, looking at this entrance, this pedestrian gate will be moved. We'll be putting in some additional new fencing along 106 with some access for parks personnel. But then if I walk us back into the park itself and go down that one spur towards the pond, we come across our another bridge that was built over a stream that comes in. Looking at it from the stream itself, or from the bridge itself, I get a nice view of the pond with all the stone edging on it. And then looking upstream, I get a really nice view of a meandering brook and the work that was done there, armor plating the sides of it. It actually was really, really pretty through there. And then in the end, I finish at a nice little plaza, nice little sitting area itself with an outstanding view. So overall, I think that the work in 6 months worth of work has been outstanding. We are, I would call ourselves ahead of schedule since the pond dredging itself. We kind of incorporated the pond dredging into this first phase of work because it was best for us to do it early. That way we could incorporate the spoils, and then we weren't disturbing areas that we had actually beautified while trying to then do additional work inside the park. So the feeling was we could do some of the hard labor inside, work our way back out again, sort of like you don't want to paint yourself in a corner if you're painting a floor, or if you're working in your house, so to speak. But then if you look at just the park itself, Chris Shipper's done some really nice job as far as some amenities going on. There's a really nice area to contribute money for birdseed. He had this box created that actually holds the birdseed itself. It's a rendition of the Bluebird box. It's really nicely crafted, and I think it's an excellent way to hold the birdseed inside instead of just a regular shed, so to speak. And then throughout the park, you'll see different birdhouses that we purchased for him and he's installed himself and maintained. It actually kind of makes it nice throughout, kind of looking at the different variants that he's done. But the best thing that I saw was people using the park. There's a couple walking along what is a trail along the other side of the brook itself. And then I passed two separate sets of couples walking, all within a 15-minute span of time. I started and I took my first picture at 8:16 in the morning. And at 8:32, I was at the other end and I had seen 7 people already through the park, all quiet, very nicely, just walking through the park and enjoying its setting. So I think that overall, as far as it goes, bringing Bristow back into the forefront, the ladies that on the right, I stopped and talked to for a bit, and they were mentioning the fact that most people don't even know that it's here. And one of the ladies actually works with you, Chris. So she was talking about how she had posted on Facebook some of the pictures taken and on the New Canaan Moms Facebook page, and got over 130 replies as to how fantastic it was and how nice the park was, and how people were actually loving the fact that it had been refurbished or is in the process of being refurbished. So if I kind of walk you through what I'll call our immediate next steps are, is to reinstall the gates, as I mentioned, and then repair the initial fencing along 106. It's been damaged through some storms. It's probably was there at the beginning when the park was first established, and is in need of removal and replacement. We have some trees that are overhanging, things of that nature. So that we're working on an RFP right now. That'll go out to bid shortly with the thought that the work can be performed at any time, hopefully very soon. We are working with the pollinator pathway. This is in conjunction with the work that we discussed at Mead itself. And we're hoping to do all the plantings together to try to save some money. And since we did very well on our bidding as far as the initial phase, we're looking at continue some of the work and replace some of the walkways along the wetlands that lead from the pond itself towards the western side of the park. And then the last thing I have my staff working on is a 4-car pull-off on Old Stanford Road. One of the couples that I had mentioned was, this is where they had parked along Old Stanford Road. And then the second thought, this is a view back towards Park Street. And I think it's given the way that the park is being utilized and given the amount of work that we've done, I think we would be remiss in not at least, if we can't extend the sidewalk all the way down 106 to Gower, we should at least make the connection with Park Street, which would then combine us with the greater portion of town itself. So when I got done with this walk, I actually texted my town engineer and said, "You've done a fantastic job on this, and see this picture, and I want to see a sidewalk start to be planned on this area." But to give me an idea of what a pull-off would look like, she gave me 3 separate renditions, or we worked through 3 separate renditions. It's a little bit tight in the area. So we have either a parallel parking situation or 2 sets of angled, either a 45-degree or a 30-degree angle, and then 1 drop-off area for either disabled individuals, or if you had a school bus come in and drop off a series of school-age students in the area. Interestingly enough, looking at disturbance-wise, the parallel, you would think the parallel parking would disturb the majority of the area. It actually does not. The parallel actually has the least amount of disturbance or the least amount of paving being placed in the area, and it probably will turn out to be the most conducive or the best solution to the problem. The other 2 cause us problems with backing out into a state road, and I think that might be looked upon poorly by the state, since this will have to go to them for approval. Looking forward in the out years, the first phase of the project itself had a budget of $199,500 funded by the town in 2021. And in John's Parks Fields budget, his capital budget, we have for 2022, we have $112,000, and then we have the remaining portion of the work finishing out in 24-25, fiscal 25. So I would just like to say thank you to the Conservation Commission and to my staff, John, Steve, Chris, done a fantastic job. The park looks beautiful even right now. And I'd be remiss without mentioning Keith Simpson Associates, since it was their plan and their foresight and their insight to bring us to this point. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Tiger, do you plan on, or does Chris plan on painting the bird feeder, the very savvy, well-made, where you're going to keep the supply? Is that going to be painted green or kept raw?
It's made out of cedar and has a pressure treated base. I'm a little hesitant to paint the cedar because I think it will eventually darken in. And also the position of it may move further in a bit, so it wouldn't be as obvious from the roadway. But I do think that it will, it'll age in color and it'll probably end up looking a little silvery, sort of like Silver Beaches in the end in its setup. But no, at this moment, no, I hadn't planned on it. Although we were thinking of drawing a little bluebird face in the faux hole that's there.
I like it. Great idea. Are there any other questions? I'll try to move my screen to see if I can see any hands. I don't see any. Oh, sorry, Carl, please.
Yeah. I'm just curious, with the bird seed, who's feeding the birds?
So it turns out we have kind of a volunteer group of people who do various shifts. And I would have to say I haven't really organized it in terms of who does what days. But what we did is we're shifting to large capacity feeders that can take 4 to 8 pounds so that you wouldn't have to restock them every day, but every 3 days or something like that. That our next step, we just brought in 400 pounds of bird food. And so one of my next steps is to organize a, let's say a core of people who will regularly restock the 7 feeders that are there. And we're also increasing the diversity. So we have Niver feeders for goldfinch. We have a couple of upside down suet feeders for the woodpeckers and what have you. So that's a to-do in a way. But I thought first, let's get the feeders in and let's get the right mix of feeders. Let's get a storage system for it. And then as of now, it's being regularly, the feeders are being regularly topped off. And then we'll tail off during the summer and then pick up again in the late fall. But we're interested in volunteers, Carl, if you're.
Francesca, go ahead.
It looks so wonderful. I'm so happy to see this. So kudos to you who've done all the work on it. Question, it looks like the walkways are gravel. Is that crushed gravel?
It's the same surface that we're using on the Waveney trails that the Conservancy has. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's actually compacted quite well. Very firm underfoot. So it should be fine for wheelchair use or for disabled individuals. That was one of the things I wanted to do, was test it today to see how it had held up so far. It's held up very well, even on the embankments or the hillside leading down from Mead down the hill towards the first bridge that we saw. Everything was nice and firm underfoot.
That's
And I would add that 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, we had a handicapped birder wheelchair come in and was totally thrilled at the opportunity to be able to visit the bird sanctuary in a wheelchair with her husband. And she, interestingly enough, she identified 18 different species on her roll through, so it's not bad.
That's great. One other question. Were invasives removed? Did you have to remove any invasives?
We over the summer, we had a volunteer corps, and prior to that, a Boy Scout group come in and cut back mostly euonymus and barberry. Those are the biggest factors, but I think the process of removal will go on for a while. And the trick is to remove and then plant with natives and give them a chance to go up. And one of the challenges, which Tiger and I have talked about, is if you introduce native plants and you don't secure the fence line, you're operating a deer feeding station. So we're working on that balance there, making our way forward.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Sven, you have a question. Go right ahead.
No, comment. Hey, Tiger, for those of us who are stupid enough to crawl down and look underneath the bridges, really nice job.
Oh, thank you very much.
Not only that, and they meet the paving, absolutely perfectly. I can see why your wheelchair bound person was completely thrilled. What a wonderful thing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris and Tiger, for the update. Beautiful.
Can I make one comment?
Please.
I just had a thought. Tiger, you see how the pumping station currently carves into the property?
Yes.
And you're trying to make a cutoff basically within the outside of the fence. Why wouldn't you think about expanding into the property a little more so you don't have, being a state road, you want to get people off the road?
There's a stone wall behind that fence line. The fence line sits on a stone wall, so there's actually an embankment. It's actually raised, so I'd have to take down the wall and push in a little bit. We could certainly look at that, but I'd have to take down that stone wall. Unfortunately, the grades are a little different, significantly different, actually.
But I would say, Tiger, if you showed that picture of where the car was, that pull-off area must be 12 feet or 13 or 14 feet wide. It's like a double wide.
It's 23 feet. I measured it this morning.
20
yeah.
Now, way
23. Yeah.
So there's plenty of room for an 8-foot car to pull in and around and have a sidewalk.
And have a sidewalk.
Right. That's our main goal, is to have a sidewalk behind. We thought about pushing it all the way towards the fence line. Then we just felt that was going to be more pavement. Most of the people would then still cheat towards the road. It's still in its infancy. This is rendition 2. So we usually go through several renditions before we'll settle on something, but this is this is draft number 2. But we'll continue to tweak it and make sure that we can have the sidewalk pass by. We want to make sure we have accessibility from the parking spaces into the park itself, and then around the spaces should we choose to continue the sidewalk down towards Gower Road. It's just at 23 feet deep, it's not deep enough. It'll take the car on an angle, but then when you back out, you're backing out into the lane. We can't do a 90-degree, and then a 45 is probably our best bet. At a 30-degree angle, it just uses up a tremendous amount of real estate. If you can imagine, the car is almost parallel at that point in time. It uses up a tremendous amount of real estate. It's granted the easiest turn out into the road, but it's a lot of real estate to use up.
Thank you, Tiger.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chris, again. Appreciate the update, you guys. Really incredible progress, and can't wait to see the next round. And I've walked it too recently. It's beautiful. Another place for people to enjoy in New Canaan. It's great. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Our next item on the agenda are the Rec and Parks Department fiscal year 22 budgets. John, would you or Todd like to go first? Would I'll wait for a show of hands, or Steve and Steve?
Sure, I don't care. Doesn't matter.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Okay. Do you want me, how much do you want me to go through? Do you want me to just hit the high points, the big changes?
Would you? Yes,
Yes,
that'd be
okay.
great.
So in our operating budget, the one of the first big changes is under outside services contractors. We've put in some money in there to plow snow at Dunning Field and keep it open all winter long. We estimate that to be about $9,000. We did that at a 4-year existing conditions, what would have been if we had plowed it. There's a lot of assumptions in there, so we're not exactly sure if that's a good number, but that's what we've been doing it. Also in that, we added some money back in that was cut out last year. Some pruning, weed control at Vine Cottage, and also the PD and the ambulance corps. And then we just put a little bit of money in there for bed maintenance on these new pollinator pathways till they're established. Mosquitoes, we want to go back to four possible catch basin treatments a year. We went down to 3, and unfortunately, if there's high pressure, we won't be able to do one in June this year. So by putting that back into the budget, we'd be able to do 4 in 1 year. Grass treatments, one of our big increases. After last month's Park and Rec meeting, we actually added into our budget a substantial amount of money so that we can seed both Saks Field, Farm Road Field, and the track field 2 more times per year. That's 16 acres at about $1,000 per acre. So we added in 32,000 for that. And we added in fertilizing the front entrance of Waveney House. Now that everything's been replanted, we'd like to keep the lawn in the best shape we can. And that was removed last year. The other one that's a big change is the property repair and maintenance line item. We added $8,000 into that item. And that is simply because we need to maintain Dunning Field. And it's not the carpet itself as much as the bleachers and renting porta-johns and all that type of stuff. When it used to be rented out and the money would be coming to, I actually, through Jay Egan, they used to do the maintenance that way. But now we feel that this is stuff that needs to be done and we want to budget for that. And you'll also notice in our capital budget, we put in $7,000 there for things like fence repairs, bleachers repairs, that type of stuff. You want me to run right into capital?
Yes, please. That'd be great. And then I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, sounds good. Capital. Very simply, the field improvements is the same work what you do every year. Not the same work, but it's basically mainly work on softball and baseball fields. So that number has been staying consistent, and that's a great help. Irrigation upgrades. We've had to make a little bit of a change. This last year, we had tremendous problems with the irrigation system, especially at Mead Park. And where a year ago, we were trying to just upgrade sprinklers, going that route, we feel that we need to replace piping. We had a lot of leaks at Mead, which shut down the system, which affects turf grass quality, but also the tennis courts too. So we feel that next year we want to replace that system at Mead Park. The exterior wall repair is continuing, along with the fence backstop repair. Water fountains is also continuing. The dunning I briefly mentioned. And then probably one of the big things is playground updates. We looked at we want to improve the surface, the safety surface of the playground at, well, I shouldn't say playground, the adult fitness at Waveney. And when we were looking at that, we had a contractor come out and he looked at the equipment and said, you really don't want to start putting a rubberized surface around this equipment. It's coming to the end of its life expectancy, and it should be addressed at the same time. And we talked about extending the playground and felt strongly that it would be a great place to have also a regular playground so that the kids weren't using the adult equipment all the time. So there's actually two separate numbers in there for the playground. It's not a both, it's one or the other. So we'd be looking at 429,000 for the whole playground. That's replace, improve, add 2 sections, one for little kids and one for other kids, and including a rubberized surface. The other number would be just to replace the adult fitness stop at $261,000. Other than that, the last 2 items are the bird sanctuary, as Tiger mentioned, and then the athletic foundation. There's $300,000 earmarked towards that for projects, being that would be the town's portion of any work to be performed in this upcoming year. As far as equipment, this year we're basically just trying to replace equipment we have. Anything from old vehicles to our backhoe loader, which happens to be one that when the highway replaced theirs, we took theirs because we felt it had a couple more years life expectancy, and they traded in ours at that time, but it's definitely needed. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Thank you, John. Jack, I believe you had some questions. There you go.
Gotta take it off mute. No, really, John's done a great job going over most of the questions that I had. I mean, or really all the questions that I had. The one thing being on Waveney. I mean, since we do have the privilege of having Kevin here too, and some other elected officials, it would be nice. It would be nice to have a playground at Waveney for kids, for younger kids. It's always been an odd situation that it's not there, but otherwise, I mean, looking at both those 2 budgets, I'll go ahead and talk about the recreation budget real quick from a high level. Looking at both the recreation and the parks budgets, really on the recreation side, you could see that it's 2020's financials have been impacted due to COVID, and whenever you look at next year's 21. 22, it kind of makes sense in a lot of the directions of how the financials look. And otherwise, John, you just brought up all the major items as you said you would.
Great, Jack, thank you. And thank you for that, that review and the preview of those numbers. I appreciate it. And John, we look forward to hearing more about that mixed use area in Waveney. I agree with Jack. I think having a playground next to a workout area to prevent the children from going on that equipment is smart. And if it can blend in with the landscape there, it's a great idea. Great use. Thank you. Any other questions? Steve Haberstraw, and then I'll go to Carl.
John, thank you. Please remind me, do the changes at Mead for pickleball fall into your budget? How does that play in?
It does fall into my budget, but I'd like to let Tiger speak on that.
Yeah, thanks, John. It does. What we plan to do, as we mentioned prior, was to take the monies that we had. In essence, we split the baby, took half the money that we had to rebuild the clay courts, and pushed that over to pickle, and made 2 projects out of it. And then looking at pickle more intensely, the surface that we need to put in, or that we were going to be replacing, needs to come out completely. So we were looking at a different type of resurfacing, or a different type of project, which would cause us to put in basically a pre-stressed concrete deck, similar to what we did for the high school tennis courts in that area, to then build pickle over the top of it, which then is going to require to take the entire amount and transfer it over. During John's budget presentation, or during our budget presentation for the DPW, I plan to mention that to the Board of Finance at that time, since they are the ones to then have to make that change. So we'll make their recommendation at the Board of Selectmen level, then the Board of Finance level, and then the Town Council level, and hopefully they'll combine it all together, and we'll be able to proceed with pickle at that time. And then the only change with that is that we, given the amount of money that we had slated for capital in John's Fields portion, we made the change that we would put play renovation 1 year out. So instead of being in the 21-22, we put it in the 22-23, in essence, to try to balance out the hit on a capital. The Board of Finance asks us to kind of level out the curve, so to speak, every year. So we felt it was necessary to move that rebuilding of the clay courts out 1 year from that. But we would look to build the pickle in the spring and then refurbish the clay the following year. I can only mention anecdotally, I've been, my town, we had 6 tennis courts that they refinished everything. But what they did is they took 3 of them and made 6 pickleball courts out of them. And since it's only a mile from my house and it's on Route 10, which I have to go to get to work, anywhere I have to go in town, have to pass it. Every single time I pass it, pickle is full with people around the fence line, and tennis is empty. And the only way tennis is actually being played is if people are playing pickle on the tennis courts. So it's anecdotally looking at it from what my town did just during COVID, and not because of COVID, they had it planned, but then it was a boom from that point on, and to the point where I'm saying there's too many people actually at the courts, for safety reasons. So anecdotally, I think it's probably the best thing that we could do is move our money to pickle, push pickle forward, get pickle working, and then come back and take care of the clay courts themselves.
And I realize you have to thank you for that. I realize it has to be approved, and then you have to deal with contractors. Did I hear you say spring of this year?
That's our goal. I'm going to get an initial read from the Board of Selectmen next week on the move, and then we'll be to the Board of Finance in February, which should give us time to put it out and get them working in the spring. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carl, and then Francesca.
Dave covered it, thanks.
Oh, you're good. Okay, Francesca, go ahead.
Oh, the pickle places that you're talking about, Tiger, are you only talking about the hard court at Mead and the half court, or are you talking about the high school courts also as a possibility?
No, I was just mentioning what only at the hard court and the half court will be changed over to pickle, and only at Mead Park. I was only mentioning the repair that was necessary, just to give you an idea as to what the scope of work would be.
I understand. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions as I do a quick review? Thank you very much, Tiger, for answering those questions. And John, thank you for your budget update. We'll stay tuned. We know it still has some hoops to jump through. So thank you. Steve Benko, would you like to go next?
Sure. All right. We have 7 budget divisions. So our administration program, we're showing an increase this year because during COVID, the high school courts were closed for the month of April while the state closed all outside activities. But when we reopened, we put an attendant on duty at the high school. We put a reservation system in, and it worked very well. Prior to that, we're closing it when people were playing back in March and early April. The courts were jammed with a lot of people from outside New Canaan, and also with a lot of people coming in and just taking the courts up for 2 or 3 hours, not giving people an hour to play. So we put our reservation system in starting in May, and we put an attendant on duty. It worked very well. I put about $16,000 in my budget to bring on an attendant to be at the tennis court at the high school courts, and I thought we might be able to offset that by charging them a small fee to play there. You might charge maybe $30 or $35 for this season to play at the high school. This will allow you to make a reservation, and the fee for the fees collected from the permits would offset the cost of the attendant. So I'm going to propose that to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, that we consider, putting an attendant on duty. I think it worked very well, and people enjoyed it because they were able to get their courts, they get their time, they knew they had a time. They weren't standing around for an hour and a half waiting to get on the court. So I think it worked out very well. So that's basically the big increase in our budget there. And the other increase is that the minimum wage goes up to $13 an hour on July 1st, I think it is. So or July 31st it is. And so that affects our day camp and other attendants. We've got to pay $13 an hour minimum wage. So that's basically an increase there in recreation. Waveney House is pretty flat. Paddle tennis is a slight increase just to cover the cost of salaries because again we got to meet the minimum wage. Paddle is booming this year. It's one of the sports people can play outdoors, and the interest is there. The permit sales are up, the play is up, so paddle is doing very well. Facilities and buildings, that budget is pretty much flat. Civic activities, which is the big cost there, is the cost for the portable sanitation we use for the fields in the fall and the spring. And there's a few dollars for our summer concerts in there, but that's up by about $250, which is not much. The Lapham Center, that's the one budget was a little confusing. Last year, as we got into our budget deliberations, Lynn Bond, who was our executive director for Lapham Center, she announced that she would plan on retiring on July 1. So for some reason, her salary got reduced from the $96,000 or $97,000 down to $78,000, and Aggie is now promoted to her position. So instead, it should have been reduced to the bottom step of Lynn's grade, and so that's why there's a difference in the salary at Lapson. But that salary is pretty flat. That budget is pretty flat. It shows an increase of almost $8,000. That's because we had to readjust things for the salary adjustment. And Kiwanis Park, again, last year we had plans to do some things and try and reinvigorate the park. Unfortunately, COVID put a big squash on that because we had to make adjustments for the camp, the Y camp, and for other things. So I left that budget pretty much the same as last year, $64,000. We'll hopefully we can build on that. Hopefully we'll have things will change and we can get back to a little more normalcy, and we can try and implement some of the changes we planned for last summer. This coming summer, we can get some additional people coming to the park and interest there. So I think we can try and do some other programs, add some different activities, try and make it more exciting for people if they'll come use the park. So our overall budget is between those 7 budget divisions. It's up by $49,477 over last year, or 2.5%, which is pretty close to the guideline that the Board of Finance asked us to do. So that's it for operating. The capital budget, we had talked about a couple things. One is the high school courts. We have funds in this current budget to resurface the court. However, the paint is peeling off very badly, and looked at it, and the one contractor says, well, we could sand the bad areas off, prime those, and paint the whole thing. But I'm just worried that I don't want to spend $45,000 or $47,000 painting the courts and have it start to peel up in areas that hadn't started to peel yet. So they suggest we strip the whole thing down to the concrete base, prime it, and then paint it. So I put $30,000 into strip the courts down to the concrete and have the new primer course put down and then paint on top of that. So we can get that done this summer, hopefully. We had some money for we have some money for in the budget for athletic field bleachers, and replace a couple of bleachers at Waveney, which on the softball fields, which they're the old style, they don't meet the new standards. So we do some of that. There's some money for some Lapin Center furniture replacement. Meat Park tennis courts, we had the walkway that goes from the parking lot down to the 4 lower courts, and then there's also a walkway that goes from the parking lot up to the back side of courts 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 years ago, we worked with Tiger and we were able to put this walkway in with using road millings. But last summer we were able to pave a section of the walkway going from the lodge up to courts 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that worked out really well. So I'd like to try and get rid of the millings and pave the walkways to make them so really nice. So we have $12,500 in the budget for walkways, and the colonnade is really improved. We added some furniture. I like that. We put $5,000 to add some additional furniture, picnic tables and furniture for the patio. It's starting to get a lot of use. People are using it, so it's really nice. That's about what we have in our capital budget. We don't have a lot more in there. We have some money for athletic field fencing. We have $10,000, which is normal maintenance on our backstops and our fences around the bench areas at Waveney and around the water tower turf fields. So that's basically it. Oh, and I'm sorry, we have $30,000 in there for some of the trail work on the Waveney Park trails. We've had a good relationship with the Waveney Park Conservancy, and each year the town has put about $50,000 or $30,000 in to do the trail work. Last year we worked with the Conservancy. We were able to do the trail completely around the Genuine Meadow on the backside, and we were able to also complete some of the work on the trail going down towards Lapham Road. So some of the work along the parkway there's areas where there's washouts and things. So we put $30,000 in the budget, and hopefully we can do a partnership with the Conservancy and fix some of the washouts and some of the rough areas of the trails along the parkway. So our trails they're getting a lot of use. As I mentioned last meeting, the Western Connecticut Council of Governments did a survey. They put a deer counter camera in, and it was amazing how many people use the trails walking on a regular basis. I think a couple of days we had over 600 people walking on the trail. So I think we can fix those back trails up. Great. So that's our basic capital budget for this year.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Questions from anyone on the commission? Hank.
Yes, thank you. Steve, last year, there was some concern expressed at a commission meeting that Waveney House wasn't as competitive as it had been as a wedding venue or event venue. Is that still an issue?
No, people are interested. Right now, the big issue is that the COVID restrictions. Right now, the state has limited capacity to 25 people at the house right now. It was up to 100, and they got reduced down to 25. So we're hoping that as vaccines become available and we can get back to more normal life, we'll be able to open the house up to larger events and activities. But right now, we're restricted to 25 people. So that really limits our ability to use the house for meetings and for rent it out for weddings and parties. We do have a lot of interest in the house. We have a strong rental from the summer, starting in end of July and August, September and October. The next fall, we're booked every weekend for events. So hopefully we'll be on the uptick and we'll get through this pandemic and they can relax some of the restrictions we have.
Thank you.
Steve. Thank you, Hank. Any other questions for Steve Benko? Francesca?
Yeah, I'm back to tennis. You're going to charge people now so that there's no place that we can play in town for free?
Well, the problem we have right now for free, I don't have money to budget to staff the high school. And then I'd have to offset the cost of staffing the high school.
And
The high school was open season, and it was people were abusing the hour. We had signs, play limit to an hour. People were waiting. People were taking 2 hours, 2.5 hours. We had people running lessons there. We had a lot of people who did not live in Buchanan come there using our courts, and we brought it back to the residents. And we had a strong. We allowed people to sign up online, and we had almost 600 residents sign up to reserve the courts. So I think they used it a lot last summer. They appreciate it. I think a small fee is not going to discourage people from playing.
your proposal is to pay by use or a membership?
I would charge maybe $30 for the season for a pass to play. And I think we could sell 400 to 500 passes at $30. It's a small amount. It's not a lot of money. And I think it would offset the cost and the cost of the attendant and the convenience to be able to go online and make a reservation and have the attendant there to make sure the people who are there are fully wants to be playing.
I don't like it. I think we have to pay for everything. It's ridiculous. I think it's we're not just breaking even, right? Aren't we making money on paddle? And the tennis season has been bad because we haven't gotten the courts together early enough 3 years in a row.
Right. No, paddles. We charge a significant cost for the permits, and we do get a lot of use. But I think the high school courts having a tenant on duty, be able to make a reservation, would make it convenient for residents to play. Right now, before we did that in May, it was open season, and I was there. People couldn't get on the courts, and I had to go on and say, "Sorry, sir, you've been here for 3 hours." Can you go? "Oh, I'm playing with a different person each time." People were waiting to get on; they couldn't get on the courts. And we put a reservation system in, and they could use the courts, and they got to play.
A reservation system can be restrictive, though. You know, people want to go to the course and play. It's the same thing with the paddle
They can make
tennis.
a reservation, and they got a lot of use. It worked out really well.
Whatever.
We have a lot of out of towners coming and inundate the courts.
And Steve, when you want to put forth that fee, what is the process for that fee? Where does that go? Does it go to us first and then Board of Selectmen?
It would go from the commission to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
And some other towns like Westport and Darien, they charge a fee for the residents, and they have basically the same kind of courts. Asphalt
Cherry
courts
Lawn
are
is free. Cherry Lawn Park is free, and that's
right, okay.
the equivalent of the high school courts.
But you have to be a resident to play them.
Sorry, Carl and then Jack. Carl, go ahead.
So we already charge a fee for the Mead courts. Would that be incorporated in with the high school courts? Do you envision having an all tennis pass, or would that be?
If you meet Park Pass, we may increase the fee by $10 or $15 just to make it an inclusive pass, so you can play at the high school or Mead Park. And if you wanted to play at the high school, we might charge say $30 for a pass to play at the high school. But the Mead Park courts would be an inclusive pass.
The thing is, there are residents who come, who have their kids visiting them for one weekend, and they want to go play, and they can't because it's all a reservation membership system, which is clubby. You know, I don't think it's great.
So maybe when you submit the idea, Steve, come up with an idea of a visitor pass, and it's for break, or it's for a week, or it's for 1 month or something. We'll come up with some sort of solution that allows for a visitor pass, and they can use the system during that period that their pass is in order. And I think bring it back to the committee, and let's figure out a way to, I understand the reason for charging. There was so much use at those high school tennis courts. I would run there every day and see it, and a lot of New York plates. So I definitely agree to have a controlled and reservation system, but let's figure out an economical way for those that just want to use it, 5 times a year, don't want to pay $30 a month, let's say. Jack, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you pretty much just said what I was going to say. I mean, it's ultimately a question of that attendant. I mean, whether or not we don't charge the people who use it or not, if we have the attendant staffing it to police it, to enable everybody to be able to use it as it was intended with the scheduling program, then the cost is there. It's just how we pay that cost, whether it's through our property taxes or through taxing or charging a small fee, $30. or something like that to the people who use the tennis court. But also the points that you made, Francesca, that you need to have the flexibility of somehow being able to, schedule it for, for people visiting and all that. I mean, I support the $30, but there has to be some kind of flexibility to allow. Maybe it's just a shortage of courts ultimately, really. But
yeah, for instance, going back to paddle, in Darien, they charge $20 for the court per hour. So that's $4 a person. In New Canaan, we charge $10 per person who's not a member. So if I have my 3 kids come and I can't do a family pass because they're over that age, and we just play for a weekend, I'm paying $30 to play because I have the membership. So I've worked out for the membership, and I play $30 every time they come to play with me. I think that's too much.
Thank you, Francesca. I appreciate that. So Steve, you'll come back to us with the pricing model and we'll go through it again.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Steve's budget update or with tennis? Jack, go ahead.
sorry, one clarification. That's $30 per year, or is it $30 per?
time you play.
No, it's not. It's a season. It's a season pass for the whole season.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion there.
April 1st to Labor Day.
Yeah, it's season is what he was been saying.
Yeah, but that's not $30. That's like 140 or something for the season pass. And then when you have a guest, the guest pays a $10 fee per guest. So I have paid the season pass, and I pay another $30 for each of my 3 kids. Each time they want to play.
We're not talking about. We're probably going to do what we did this past year. You signed up to play at the high school. It didn't cost you, but you had to register. You got a way to make a reservation. So we would probably do is we wouldn't probably charge guest fees for the high school. We would just say, okay, if you're going to want to play as a resident, you pay $30 to get a pass to play for the year. It would take you from April 1st through Labor Day, and we wouldn't charge you a guest fee. If your kids are going to come play, we wouldn't charge you a guest fee. We charge a guest fee at Meat Park. We charge a guest fee at the paddle tennis because it's a different situation.
Yeah,
Their aunt's situation is they don't charge the residents for a paddle pass. It's every time you play, you have to be a resident. Every time you play either $20 or $25 per hour for the court. So if you have 4 people, you're either paying $5 or $6 or $7 an hour for the court. So
right.
They have a different type of fee schedule there.
Yeah, and Steve was estimating that the attendant would cost $16,000, and if he sold $30 season tickets to 400 people, like he was estimating, then you'd have $12,000. So you'd offset a good portion of that attendant right there.
Great, thank you, Steve. We'll wait for you to come back for us on that list of fees, and we'll review it again at that time. I appreciate that. Thank you for your comments, Francesca, Jack, Carl. Next item on the agenda, Rec Director's report.
All right, I'll be quick. After our last meeting, we had our drive-by with Santa, which was very successful. We had people sign up, and they came by, and Carl Chevrolet set up a pickup truck with a cab on it, and we asked people for a donation, unwrapped toy for Toys for Tots, and we had a great turnout. In fact, Santa stayed an extra hour and a half because the line of cars was continuous coming through, and the people were great. They overfilled the pickup truck with toys. It was phenomenal, but it was a great event, and it went really, really well. And it was great. They drove by, and Santa was there. He had the elves up there. And kids all got candy canes, so it was a real fun event. We've been working with the health department on the COVID testing at Lapham, and so we've been getting the building open and ready for them. So that every day, Monday through Saturday, it's been 7 to 10 a.m. on reservations to get your COVID test. When the town does get its vaccines, they will use Lapham again for the vaccinations. That'll be on an appointment situation. So we're setting up the boost for them to have, so they can do the vaccination boost. We've been working to monitor the fields, and thanks to John talked to Kevin, and thanks to Kevin, we were able to plow the fields after the snowstorm in December and get them open. We had a lot of people out throwing a lacrosse ball, kicking a soccer ball, throwing a football. It's been just people to get outside and get some fresh air and activity. So it's people just jogging around the field. So it's just been great. So we've been following the state guidelines. Right now, they're kind of restrictive. They limit groups to 4 people. They don't allow any team practices or any kind of pickup games. So it's kind of restricted what you can do, but at least we got the fields open and people are out there using it. It's great. Tiger worked with with Planet Buchanan on the Christmas tree drop off, and they started on January 2nd and it finishes past Sunday. And I believe I thank Robert Bates Mason and Katie Osley for their work on it. And Tiger managed to work to get the contract to chip the trees, but I think they got close to 500 Christmas trees, which was phenomenal. So it went very well, and all the trees are chipped. They're all gone. The lot's cleaned up, and so it's great. And I want to thank Tiger for his help on that. So it went real well. The phase 1 of the ADA work for Waveney House began this past last week, last Thursday or Friday, and so the contractors are working, removing tiles and preparing the loggia area for the new walkway. And they've been working on the west porch area for the new ramp there. So they're working on phase 1, and hopefully that'll be finished by early April, mid-April. Paddle tennis, as I mentioned earlier, is very busy. We've sold a great number of passes, almost greater than last year. I know Francesca mentioned the guest fees. A lot of people have been paying guest fees, but our revenues are up by about $19,000 over last season. So to date. So we're doing very well at paddle. It's very busy. People are playing all the time. Reservations is working well. So it's been a very busy paddle season, and it's one sport you can be outside, you can play, and it's getting a lot of use. So, and let's see what else I got. Anything else here? One other thing. In March, early April, the high school for the last several years has done a color run, which we've worked with them to help set the course up and provide support for it, and that was based for the high school scholarship fund. It was usually held in April. They couldn't have it last year because of COVID. And look like this year they won't be able to do it again. They're trying to reinvent it. What they like to do is they want to do a golf ball drop from a helicopter. They've done it in several other communities, and it's worked very well. What they do is they'll sell, say, 1,000 golf balls as the fundraiser, and then they'll have somebody combine it. A pilot in town who's done the Santa Claus delivery the last several years, but they would contract with him to have his helicopter come in. He would hover over a target area on the soccer field at Waveney and drop a box with 1,000 golf balls, and they would land on the field. And when you bought your golf ball, you have a numbered ball, and it'd be a chance to win one of 3 prizes, and the money all goes to the scholarship fund. So they'd like to do it on March 31st, which is a Wednesday. There would be no spectators. It would be their volunteers there. They would set up the soccer field, the big athletic soccer field, Waveney. The guy would come in, drop the golf balls, take off, and then the closest balls to the target would be the grand prize winners. What they plan on doing is having their channel 78, the high school, film it, and it'd be broadcast live to the kids at the high school because they could see it. But there would be no spectators allowed because of the COVID rules restrictions. So they came to the town last fall about looking at it. We discussed with Tucker Murphy and the police chief and a few other people. And I think it might be a nice way for them to reinvigorate their scholarship drive this year, since they won't be able to do their normal color run. And I gave them permission to go ahead and do it. So I just want to report to the commission that they'll probably do that on the 31st of March.
Thank you, Steve. I don't see any hands. Thank you so much. Park Superintendent's report. John, you're up.
How you doing? Okay, first I want to beat Carl to him asking me a question. Trees at the orchard field. just so everybody knows, the 3 maple trees that are behind the backstop are red maples, not Norway maples. They're actually a variety called October Glory. So they'll be nice and bright red come fall. And while I'm talking about those trees, the apple trees that we planted, there are 2 Liberty apple trees, 2 Honeycrisp, 1 Granny Smith, and 1 Yellow Delicious. Not that we'll get probably real great apples off those trees, but there's the potential that we will. Other than that, we've been working, we had one big snowstorm, but after we got that all cleared up, we've been working on cutting back brush. We've been cleaning up some of the areas we did last year, like the stone wall along by the pool, and we're going further down the road there. There is follow-up maintenance. The stumps will grow back and things like that, so we're working on that. We've been cutting back the trails. Some people might have noticed that, but coming up Waveney Road, but from South Avenue, we cleared understory and saplings between the road and the trail, which in my opinion really improved that. And then I wasn't on last week, but from your meeting, I got word that there was some stuff to do down at Kiwanis. So Todd and I took a look at Kiwanis, and after we finished up some other projects, we started working down there today. And I think in the next week or so, you'll see some drastic improvements there, clearing up brush, cutting back wood lines, weeds. Again, we're going to clean up the pine needles on the in the play area. One thing that I want to put a mention out there, it's probably time to get rid of those white pines in the play area. They were planted way back just to give a little bit of screening, color, whatever you want to say, to the area. And it'd be time to, in my opinion, to cut them down. They do drop branches now and then, things like that. So other than that, anybody have any questions?
John, I had 2 along the lines of Kiwanis. Can you just confirm you did remove the older trash cans that were dilapidated? Are those gone?
Those are gone, yes.
Thank you. And next question, as far as those trees, would you have the tree warden look at that to see if those, the trees you just mentioned need to be removed or no?
They don't need to be removed safety concern wide. So he would have to go out there and look at them and post them.
Okay. Okay, that was my question. Thank you. And you said you're about a week away from cleanup, another week?
We probably, by the time we're done, depending on weather, we'll have Kiwanis done in the next week. That's for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know there's a few Kiwanis neighbors and interested parties on the call, so that's really helpful. Thank you. Jack, I'm sorry you had your hand up.
Yes. So at the sled hill, the snow sledding hill there at Waveney, the pond there. Went there a couple times with the kids and all that. Both my kids and we had some friends with us, and one of their sons sled down the hill, went pretty well, and hit the end of the hill, and then sled right onto that pond. Is there any way to put a hay bales or straw bales in front of that pond to prevent kids from sliding onto it on accident?
Yeah, we used to put hay bales up there, and what happened is they eventually soak up some water.
Yeah,
and become like a concrete wall. And talking with the town's insurance company, we were better off not putting anything there instead of having a man-made wall per se of hay bales.
How about a berm? How about a berm with out of, I don't know, something to slow down those sleds?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But, I haven't come up with anything
that works.
Anything that we create, we can't create a man-made hazard that's going to be worse than doing nothing, unfortunately.
Understood.
Yeah, our insurance carriers asked us, the moment we do something, we have to make it safe. And then we're giving a feeling or a modicum of safety. And if it proves not to be, then the town is liable versus the person is traveling at their own risk. That's the reason why we posted. There's certain verbiage for ice skating as to whether or not, we're not saying the ice is safe. We're saying that you can, skating is permitted. There's difference in the verbiage that we're permitted to use. So there's different things that they're telling us we can do in other areas.
Is there any way to use the verbiage and to be able to put up, I got your point with making basically a concrete wall, but a net or something to slow down those sleds. I mean, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old have a difficult time slowing down their sleds heading towards that pond. And they don't understand that it's weak ice.
The net still gives a modicum of safety, and if the net fails, then the onus comes back on the town for the failure of the safety equipment, so to speak.
Thank you, Jack. Great. John, did that wrap up your report?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate your update. Next item on the agenda is the chairman's report. I guess after, an hour and time going by, I wanted to introduce the commission and everyone else to George Bennington. He is our latest member of the Parks and Rec Commission. So George, thank you for being patient. And I know we chatted before we started our meeting to say hello, but welcome aboard.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to learning and serving. Thank
Excellent.
you. Looking forward to working with you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then I just wanted to touch briefly, we will get an update at February's Park and Rec meeting from the carriage barns. So I wanted to give everyone a heads up. So that should be interesting. I know it's been a while since they've been at one of our meetings, and hopefully we'll hear more about the ADA work at Waveney and its progress. And then potentially some updates on the rec programs that we'll offer in and around town. So stay tuned for that. Next item on the agenda are the committee reports. The first item we'll talk about is the ice rink. And just to back up to last month's meeting, we announced at that meeting forming this subcommittee to find a location for an ice rink in one of the parks in New Canaan. The 3 members on that subcommittee are here tonight. Jake Granito, Hank, did I lose Hank? He might be on my next screen. Hank Green is on, and Francesca Segalis. So Jake, if you can give us an update where you are, and if anything, I know you just were given this task last month, but where you are today.
Hey, thanks, Rona. Hi, everyone. So yeah, we got the rink delivered to us on January 4th. It's being stored at Carriage Barn right now. I'd like to thank Tom O'Day and Gene Goodman for all their work so far on this. And right now, what we're doing is we're going to work with the town senior engineer and start going over locations and actually getting out into the parks and seeing what will fit best, with the parks, power, lighting, and all the other aspects that come to this. So, I mean, if anyone has any questions, I can try and answer what we have right now. But we just formed the committee, and we're going to really work with the town and the people of the town to do what we can.
And am I correct in saying that the equipment this winter, the season is past? There's no opportunity to put that anywhere, correct? In the equipment.
Correct. I just Rona, it's something that you don't just put together within a week. This is going to take a lot of planning. So what we're doing is we're going to get ahead of it now, and we're going to look to have it up and ready for the next winter. So that way, this gives us enough time to work with Tiger and Steve and John on anything that we need to do with the parks, and just kind of get everything together on that end.
Great. Thank you. We'll look forward to hearing your updates and your findings. And I know there's a lot of curious minds out there. I know you've received a lot of emails and questions and calls. And so keeping the committee updated, the Park and Rec Commission, I should say, of what the subcommittee findings are would be great. And I understand it would still have to come back through the commission for approval. And then if I'm correct, Board of Selectmen also. So thank you so much. I appreciate your update, Jake. To be continued.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. And that parlays really well into our last item on the agenda for tonight. And that's the Kiwanis meeting that was just held with those interested in commenting and hearing more about Kiwanis and the goings on that was held on January 7th just recently. And Hank Green was involved, Francesca Sagalas and Carl Mason were all on the call, as I was too. So Hank, would you give us an update of what occurred on that call? And I know some of those people that attended are here tonight.
Thank you, Rana. I mean, just very quickly, I think the most notable aspect about this call was that we were joined by, I believe, more than 18 New Canaan residents who live in close proximity to the park. And perhaps this shouldn't be a surprise because of all the four major parks in New Canaan, I believe the Kiwanis Park has the greatest concentration of nearby homes where people are impacted by what happens at the park. And to be candid, I just found this public interest in Kiwanis Park to be really heartening. Overall, it seems that the residents' concerns appeared to fall into three categories. The first category was it was really almost total agreement. They do not want the town to consider the park as expendable. They believe the park can continue to be of considerable value to the town. Number two, they are interested in the parks being better maintained. They also want it to be better publicized, and I think people wish to have to sustain a fair balance between public use and the use by the Y. And finally, some, not all, but some people on the call expressed skepticism about locating an animal shelter in the park or an ice rink in the park. And so the advisory committee, we intend to review, many of these issues and hope to get back to the commission with our ideas. Thank you.
Hank, that was a great update, and I think it summarized definitely the mood of that call and what was covered. I think the energy and the amount of excitement for that park was definitely there. I will mention just a couple of suggestions that night were to work even more closely with the Chamber of Commerce so that small events, during the day that could be there like they were in the past, which the neighbors had mentioned that, and also newcomers to ensure that those know, just like Chris Shipper and Tiger had mentioned, people didn't even know, Bristow was there. It's similarly the same thing with Kiwanis, and I know Jack has mentioned it too. So I think getting that word out and putting it back on the map is great. So I appreciate your time, and Carl and Francesca also, and the neighbors and those that are on the call tonight. Thank you. It's a great update, and to be continued similarly with the ice rink. So thank you. I do not have anything else on the agenda. So I don't see any show of hands. If anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn. Who's fastest at this? All right, Francesca, do I have a second? That was Jack Hawkins, all in favor? Thank you, Steve Haberstraw, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Rana.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Good night.